Hi DIYers, this is Frank at Alarm Grid. We are back in our video lab working on our Total Connect tutorial videos, and today we're going to show you how to add and delete users from the Total Connect website. We'll start by surfing to totalconnect2.com, and we'll just type that right into our web browser here. We're on Chrome today. And we already have our username and password set up. In your case, if you don't have it auto populated, you can manually type in your username and password. If you need any help getting into your Total Connect account, you can reach out to your AlarmNet dealer. If you have not set up an AlarmNet account, check out our How to Log In video, and you'll learn that you'll need to set up an AlarmNet account in advance. Assuming you have all your credentials, we'll go ahead and log in. Once you get logged into Total Connect, we're going to jump over to the users section. So on the left-hand side here, we have users. And if we expand this section, you'll see a few different selections here. Now, you may be wondering why you don't see these two on your login. We do have multiple locations set up on this login, meaning that we have multiple alarm systems tied to the same login. This current location users and all location users will only show up if you do have multiple locations. If you don't, you can just ignore it. If we go to add new user, the first prompt will be whether or not you want this to be an admin, standard, or panel only user. Just to talk real quick about what these mean, the admin is basically a Total Connect user that will also have admin access to add, change, or delete any existing users on Total Connect. So if it's a business and you have a business partner, office manager, someone that you want to be able to manage this with you, but you still want full kind of super admin access, you can create them as an admin, which will give them the ability to arm and disarm from Total Connect and also manage other users on the account. The most common user type will be standard. Standard is basically just, I want to add a user code to the system so they have local access, and a Total Connect user so they can use the Total Connect interface to arm and disarm as well. You can decide which locations you want to give them access to, and you can also choose whether or not they have access to automation or video or any individual items, and we'll show you that in detail in a moment. The third user type here might be for a business situation, maybe a house cleaner or someone that you want to give local access to on the alarm system, but do not need Total Connect access. Maybe less tech-savvy alarm users that are going to be using the system. This might be a good thing for them, but panel only basically means that it'll push this code to the system. They can arm and disarm locally at the panel, but they will not have a username or password or login at all for Total Connect 2.0. So let's assume that we'll just do a standard user here. This will launch us to the next screen, and we'll be able to start typing things in. So let's just go ahead and run a test here. So we'll do Jane Doe at janedoe@gmail.com. Again, this is where you could choose to change admin or standard user access later, so you don't have to necessarily decide that off the bat earlier. Up here, you can add an image if you wanted to, put a family photo or portrait of whoever this is. Time format, you can choose military time or just standard 12-hour time. Prompt for user code. This is a selection which states right here it would require you to enter your 4-digit user. If you want to keep things a bit more secure, beyond just having to have the password for Total Connect, this adds a second layer of security to be able to prompt this particular user, not necessarily all users, to have to type in manually their 4-digit user code each time they arm and disarm from Total Connect. I usually keep this disabled because I have all my users use Touch ID through the app on the phone, but you can certainly enable this if you want to keep things a bit more secure. I'll go ahead and disable it for now. We'll hit continue. This will bump us to the next section here, which will actually be the email or text alerts. Okay, so there's 3 different types of alerts you can set up on a user: email, text, and push notifications. We'll have videos for each of these, and you can certainly check those out on our channel. But just to be clear here, if I were to go back to this section where I typed in the email, I was not entering the email as for alerts. This is the username. I generally recommend the email because I find it's the easiest thing to remember. That way you have the email just as a universal login. If you prefer to have a different username, you can. But just to differentiate from the email alerts, which is the second section here known as contact information versus user information, this will be if you want to receive email alerts in your inbox for whatever you enable under the notifications section here on the left, which again we'll have a separate video for. For today, we will set up the email alerts just so you can see how that works. Once we have the Gmail account plugged in, we can enter it here and confirm. We'll get the check mark and it'll save. Let's say we wanted to add text alerts as well, also known as SMS. We can then enter the phone number here. So we'll just enter the good old Hollywood number and duplicate that. 5555. Got a check there to confirm it was entered properly both times. This is where you would choose your carrier. The large majority of customers are going to be under this AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, or T-Mobile category. If you have a specific carrier that's listed here separately, you can certainly select that. If you're finding that your carrier is not listed in this list, the workaround to that would be to create an email and actually enter your 10-digit phone number. So 1-555-555-5555 at whatever the SMS or MMS email to MMS or email to SMS gateway is. You can usually Google this. Depending on the carrier, you might find that they don't have them listed here. If that's the case, what you can do is just search or reach out to your carrier to determine what their SMS gateway is. It's essentially an email gateway that by typing in the leading 10-digit phone number with the suffix of whatever that gateway is, it will redirect things to your phone in text form. So again, email, SMS using the built-in carriers. If your built-in carrier isn't showing here, you can certainly type in your full phone number here at whatever the gateway is. I believe ATT .net might be one of them. I can't remember offhand. vText I think was one for Verizon, but again, those are listed as carriers here. You can easily pull up an SMS email gateway list online and determine if that's going to work for you after sending the signal. So we'll go ahead and just put our email back in here and we'll re-enter. We'll choose the carrier here. Again, we'll use just the generic 4 big carriers. This is contact info. So there it is. If you wanted to add any other points of contact, you could add them here. Let's say you and your wife both want to get emails, both want to get texts on the same user setup here, or if this was, going to be a general user for all the employees in your office and they're going to share the same code. You can certainly add as many emails and texts as you want here. And then when you're done, hit continue. In this case, we're just going to set up one user, one email, one text. So we'll hit continue. So bump us to section 3, known as user access. And here's where it gets a little tricky, only if you have multiple locations. And again, if you only have one, maybe a little bit more straightforward. I have 3. So just to show you one location at a time, I can check the box for the location, which will enable access to everything on that location. In this case, enabling Z-Wave access, meaning, thermostat control, lock control, lights, everything that is in the automation section here. This is where you would map in the code. So you'd want to put in a new unique code, type that right in. And then once that's typed in, you can apply this code to this location only or do it to all locations. Now, if this was a user that you wanted to set up and have access to multiple locations, you could. In this case, we'll just do this location. Just to show you some of the other possibilities of other things you can check off for access on a user. We have a Lyric controller here, a little different than the Lynx Touch, where we can enable not only automation control, we can enable the built-in camera. So on the Lyric, there's a built-in camera on the front display that will show snapshots. So you could enable the ability for this user to see in the event log those snapshots and download them, access them. If you don't want that, simply uncheck it. Wi-Fi doorbell. If you have a Skybell video doorbell, you can access video footage from that device here for this user if you want to enable that. Again, if you don't have to. Same with automation. Let's say we only want them to be able to arm and disarm locally at the security system, locally at the security system, and be able to arm and disarm from Total Connect, but we don't want to give them full access to automation. In order to click anything into the user code, we'll have to first check this security system off. If we check this here, then it'll add everything. If we just check here, it'll simply add security access, right? We won't be able to add a user code in here until this is checked, okay? So once that's checked, we can type in a new code, and there we go. If you want to show it to confirm that it went in properly, you can do that, hide it, show it, hide it again. We can do again, apply this code to this location only, and then we can move to the next. If we just close that by clicking the arrow here, move to the last panel. Let's say this one we want to give full access and automation. This is where we can add another code. Add another 4-digit code here. We can show and hide. I'm just putting in a generic code here. Make sure that this is not a duplicate code. If you have an existing master code, installer code, any other users that are already on the system, you will not be able to reuse that code here. You can only have one code per slot. So just keep that in mind. Once you've added all the codes you want, you can hit create user, and that will essentially create welcome emails to all those users. Okay, so janedoe@gmail.com, whoever she is, be curious actually who has that email. But that email will show up, and they'll receive alerts of saying, hey, welcome to Total Connect. They'll get that welcome email, and they'll be able to log in and create a password, and then be able to log right in to the Total Connect web interface. You'll notice that it says not synced. You'll notice that it says needs verification. So this is where it gets a little tricky. After you create a user, they will need to verify their identity by clicking on the link that they receive. Okay. Until they do that, they won't be verified and they won't be able to receive alerts. Furthermore, on alerts, you'd have to then go to your notifications and add this user to whatever user groups you need, and then enable notifications for them as well if you want them to receive notifications. The last thing here is the syncing. When you're first setting these up, the verification might involve a third party or whoever that user is, and they may not be with you at the time. So you just have to reach out to them, shoot them a text, email them, call them, let them know, hey, you need to verify this if you want alerts. But when you're setting this up, the first thing you want to do after you configure the user is do a user sync. So you'll see the state here shows not synced. You'll notice that up on the top right, we can kind of toggle between these locations. You'll notice you saw a little syncing icon there. But if we actually go back to the menu here. If we go to events, we'll be able to load our events here. And on the Lyric panels, you'll notice that the sync is automated. That, just a few minutes ago, we actually push through a user sync automatically. So as soon as that code gets added, the Lyric controller is smart enough to say, hey, it looks like a new user's added. Let's go ahead and push that to the system. Not all alarm systems will do that. So if you toggle up here and we go to the 21 IP, for example, you'll notice that, that as of today, earlier today, there was a user sync, but that was manual. That was something that I pushed on our end through Total Connect. The Vista panel, unfortunately, due to just the technological infrastructure on the Vista system, doesn't have the ability to automate those user syncs or zone syncs for that matter. So it's something you have to do manually. So you'll want to go to locations and you'll want to choose that location. Just click edit over here with the little pencil icon. Again, this is only something you'll have to do on this Vista panel. And you'll have two different types of syncs here. You have a panel sync. The panel sync will pull in automation devices, burglary sensors, any new zones you add, things like that. The user sync is something that's going to push new users specifically. So we'll go ahead and click synchronize users or sync users there, which is in blue, and we'll get that to sync here. As soon as this process starts, you'll notice that this grays out and you won't have the ability to sync until that process completes, whether it goes through successfully or fails. We'll have to see. Let's go into events here. So we can see here, user sync begins. This user sync success again was from earlier today, a few hours earlier. And this user sync begins is going to log here. It can take upwards of 2, maybe even 3 minutes in some cases for these things to go through, especially if you're on cellular only. If you have internet service on your Vista panel, then it should go through fairly quick, but we'll be able to get the timestamp here and see. So you'll notice, it went through in about 45 seconds. User sync came through. That confirms that now that code has been pushed to that panel, okay? It's very important to realize that unless you get that user sync success on the event log for each location that you enabled, that code has not been pushed to that alarm system. So it might be here on Total Connect. They may very well have a Total Connect user, but until that user actually gets pushed down to the alarm system, meaning that it's downloaded from the AlarmNet server where Total Connect is hosted down to your alarm panel at your home or business, that user code will not work at the panel. So until you see this user sync success, don't expect to be able to arm and disarm locally with that code, nor should you be able to arm or disarm with that Total Connect user from Total Connect because that code hasn't been pushed to the system. So again, that's something you'll have to do per location. We can just to show you here, we can go to the L7000, which happens to be a Lynx touch panel, and you see here that user sync failed. Okay, so this is another thing that I've noticed can happen. The reason why I'm showing you this is I actually have pulled my L7000 off the Wi-Fi just to kind of show you what may happen if your system is offline at the time of adding a user. It is automated just like a Lyric, but it will only try once. So if it fails and then internet restores later, you will have to manually push that again. You'll be able to see here in the user section by going to all location users. You'll see here, let's go to Jane Doe, the one we just created. And you'll see it's already assigned a slot number, but it actually hasn't pushed the system according to the event log. So now it'd be a matter of working with your security, your alarm company to make sure that your system is online. If it's a Wi-Fi issue, just make sure that you get your system plugged back into the proper Wi-Fi locally. Once it's back online, then you want to initiate that sync again. So go back to locations. Being that this was automated, you didn't have to do this the first time. And what you may notice when you circle back here is, maybe by then, let's go ahead and let this load for a moment. What you'll notice is we can go ahead and hit sync users. We'll get the blue button again. It will then gray out after it starts going through. And if we go back to events, we'll see here that it actually didn't initiate again. So what we'll want to do is, there we go. So at 4:55, which is right now, we have the user sync begins. I imagine this will fail again because our system, our L7000 in the lab in the other room, is offline. So we'll double check that. But what you want to do is basically hang on this screen and wait and just see, does it fail or does it go through successfully? Never assume that it goes through automatically. So even on the Lyric and Lynx touch panels that are automated, there will be a message whether or not it's successful in its automatic push. The Vistas, on the other hand, like I said, you will have to manually push. But again, just make sure to check these event logs. Make sure the user sync goes through successfully. Once you're done pushing those codes to the system, I always recommend locally checking them. And it looks like one of my techs in the other room didn't like getting the comm failure. So they got it back on Wi-Fi. That means that user sync success. We got that code to push back down to the system. So now we have all three panels on our Total Connect login with new users, all done right here from the web on using Total Connect. No need to do anything locally at the system. You could do this, right from the comfort of your own home, and you can do it from multiple different locations at once. Once all those user codes are pushed, I do recommend locally testing these. You can log into that specific user, arm and disarm from each location by toggling through here in the security section, or you can just locally at the panel plug in those codes, make sure you can arm and disarm with them. Realize that these are not master codes or installer codes. These are just regular sub-user codes. You should be able to intermittently arm and disarm with these codes amongst each other and also amongst the master code. Installer and guest codes are going to have different authority levels, meaning that they can only disarm the system when those codes were used. Sub-users, anything that you're adding new from Total Connect will be a sub-user that will make things easy to be able to arm and disarm interchangeably using your master code or any of those sub-users. So if you have any further questions on adding or deleting users, which I'm going to show you in just a second here, you can definitely email us at support@alarmgrid.com. And I want to just show you the last step, which is going to be going into the users. We'll go to our all locations. And again, you may not see this if you don't have multiple locations. We'll go to this user. And when we come in here, we can actually create this entire user. What this will do is it'll actually delete all three codes from each system, or excuse me, all three codes, each individual code from each system. So we would hit delete. Now, if I hit no here, I want to show you something else that you can do. If you want to temporarily remove access for a user, you can hit this section here to actually disable the user status. When you hit disable user status, you still need to sync. And if you read this note here, you'll see that you will need to re-enter the code later if you do that. So this is basically a temporary way to keep them with the Total Connect access, but disable their ability to arm and disarm. For now, we'll actually do a full-on deletion here. And in order to do that, we'll just kind of cancel out for now, being that delete user section has been grayed out from us messing around in there. If we come back into the user section, we'll click delete user. Go ahead and click yes. Once that has been deleted, you'll get that message. Click OK. Now, again, if we go to the events, you'll notice that your Lyric panel or your L7000s, we have the automated sync, right? On the L7000. On our Lyric, we have the automated sync. Okay, so that already pushed. What this did is it synced the users, meaning that it wiped that code from the system. If we go to the L7000 that we just looked at, we'll notice that the user sync is still running here, so that it might take a little bit longer on some of these. To point out why, in this case, this one's taking longer. We actually have a cell backup on this L7000, which is actually probably why it's moving a little bit slower. If we move to the last panel here, which is the Vista 21 IP, what you'll notice is this sync was from 8 minutes ago, so we'll need to manually push this. So we'll go to locations, click the pencil here, and then go ahead and sync users. And you may notice if I click back here, now it's showing panel sync. Before, it actually did have a green check mark. Sometimes these become out of sync, and Total Connect can take a little bit of time to catch up to realize it's out of sync. It's always a good thing to run the sync manually just in case. If you go to the event log, it's not going to lie. So if you are under the Vista panel location, and you have your last sync was hours earlier or not in live time, this is when you want to run the sync. You make sure it comes through. Now we have user sync success, and we know that that user code has been removed from the Vista panel. So that is how you add and delete user codes from Total Connect on the web. If you have any other questions regarding adding or maintaining user codes in general on Total Connect, you can email us at support@alarmgrid.com. If you found this video helpful or useful, please like the channel. Please like the video, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel.